got him. I got that one. Now he feels decent. He feels decent. That right there, folks. I love coming here. Oh my goodness, cold water bass fishing. Oh. Come on in here. Get on in here. Boy, you know, for a cold water fish, you sure got some shoulders. Ah! Folks, today, look at that fish. Look how fat that fish is. Beautiful looking fish. We'll let him go. Today, we are at beautiful Apache Lake. One of my favorite all-time lakes. I love this lake. It's hard to get in the road. They're working on it, but it's tough to get back in here. But for me, it's a fisherman's dream. I just love it back here. I won my first boat on this lake. We were talking about that earlier, going, wow, I've actually had a lot of success on this lake over the years. And one thing about this lake, though, is it's just as temperamental as the rest of them. One day you're catching them, the next day you're not. But in saying that, you just got to change up techniques. I started my morning this morning. I figured I'd go down the bank. We just had a big front come through, a bunch of rain. We had snow in the mountains. We're in mid-February. And it's cold. The water temperature is 51, 52 degrees. When we got on, it was 50 degrees. So in that colder type water, man, sometimes you can catch them on a nice crankbait or something like that, going down some of these rocks, because maybe later in the day as the sun comes up, they'll move up and they'll actually start wanting to sun themselves a little bit. But right now, I covered a lot of water and I wasn't getting bit. I was seeing fish chase the bait a little bit. So in saying that, I think I'm gonna slow down, grab what I think is one of the top-notch techniques that we have out there to catch those bass that are a little bit finicky, and go down still these rock banks like this where I'm seeing the fish and throw a drop shot. This consists of a 1/4 ounce weight on the bottom, and then I'm throwing that with a little #1 rebarb hook. That's actually a robo worm, oxblood red flake. I love crawdad colors this time of year, whether you use red, oxblood, things to that nature are awesome when it comes to this time of year. And I'll throw that on 8 or 6 pound test line. Right now I've got 8. The fish in here, we've caught some quality fish here in the last year or two, but I haven't caught any smallmouth. But you never know, maybe today might be the day. But we're definitely catching some largemouth. I'm just gonna kick around, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start fishing some of this chunk rock where I think the crawdads will hide out, where the fish can hide out, and see if I can catch some of these fish. Oh, got him. Right off that point. Oh, he's not a giant. But he is a fish. Oh, come on, son. Get over here. Come on, you going nowhere. Oh, that's the place where you like to see them load up, is on those points. That cold water fish. He's not a bad fish. He'll do in a pinch. Come on, bud. Oh my goodness, little drop shot bass. You know, when it's slow out, look how fat and chunky they are, though. It's not like they ain't healthy. They are a healthy, good-looking fish. Oh, yeah, a lot of times you can go right off these points, and boy, they'll sit right off the ledges off these points, and you can see the boulder rock there. And I'll tell you something else, when the sun starts beating on the rocks like that, they warm up a little quicker. Man, they'll kind of move up in there and feed. One thing to remember about fronts that come through, especially in the wintertime, is it kind of shuts the fish down a little bit, especially the first few beautiful days. It's fun to get out. After a cold front or something like that, it takes the fish, they need some stability. So you get about 3 days of good weather, and then you can get out and start catching them. but we have a high pressure. We have virtually no wind. And what that tells me is the reaction bite probably isn't gonna be as good, and I need to slow down and worm, jig, drop shot, things like that to catch these fish. I caught that fish off this point, so what I wanna do now is I'm gonna fish this point a little bit. Sometimes they school up in there, you'll have a couple of fish in there, but what's really important to do when you're doing this drop shot, and the one reason I love this particular technique when the fishing's slow, is because I'll throw it out there, let the weight hit the bottom, and then that bait will slowly fall behind it. And what I'm doing is almost dead sticking it, and then kind of slow pull drag with my rod tip, not my reel, my rod tip. And by doing that, it just kind of pulls it over the boulder, rock, or whatever, and then I'll let it drop right in front of the rock. And just let it sit there. This isn't a technique like this time of year. This isn't where I'm shaking the rod tip and making the worm bounce all over the place. These fish are real lethargic. They're slow. They kind of go over there and look at it, and you know, it's a real slow technique. Now I'm using a curl tail. You can use a straight tail as well, but I like the curl tail effect because when it's down there just sitting and it's kind of coming down, it has that little tail action, whether it's a pincher of a crawdad or a tail of a crawdad or a tail of a fish, whatever it mimics, it attracts the fish, and they'll sit there and watch it, and sometimes they'll react on it that way. So I kind of like that with the curl tail. Got him. Oh, that's a little bit better fish too. Come on, son. Oh. There we go. Those are the ones you like off these rocks. A little bit better fish right there. Come on, come on. Oh, come on. Yeah, little quality bass right there. Yeah. Oh, look at that. I popped right out. You know, that says a lot about keeping pressure on the fish. But look, they're still fat. Look at that. Look how fat they're getting. Eating good. Yeah, it's February. It won't be long, and these fish will start pushing up the spawn. Water temperature's coming up a little bit in this area we came to too, and that's one thing that's really important to remember, folks, when you're out fishing in February. It's usually when the days start becoming a lot longer. The water temperature warms up a little quicker during the mid part of the day, and so these fish tend to want to push up. You know, that's when they get a little bit more active, and you can catch them a little shallower, so it's a lot of fun. But yeah, these fish will start pushing up here soon, and they'll start looking for places to, well, what I call pre-spawn fish, and they'll start trying to travel down these banks like this to find a cove that's got really not a lot of wind. You got to remember, in this time of year, it's kind of nice to find areas that don't have a lot of wind. That's where the fish want to be, where the water warms up. So you can get back into those cuts and where the water warms up quicker, and you'll start seeing them kind of migrating through there every so often if you have a good pair of polarized sunglasses. That's another thing that's very important, especially fishing in clear water. Got to have a good pair of polarized sunglasses to see what's going on underneath the glare of the water. So the glare that hits the water like this, if you have just regular glasses on or don't even wear a pair of sunglasses that are polarized, you'll have a glare and you really can't see underneath the water as well. So it's important to get a good pair of polarized sunglasses, especially during the spring. But man, this time of year, the water's a little bit clear. I saw a huge carp, and I'm starting to see them migrate around a little bit. So that's kind of cool. They're moving up a little bit. Up, 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 up. Oh, that one went out right alongside that wall. Come on, son. He's right up the shade on that wall right there. Come on. I thought, man, there's got to be one on these walls. Come on. Ah! And that is a beautiful little fish. Look at that. That's a nice sizing right there. Beautiful Apache Lake bass on that drop shot rig. Let me tell you something. We've gone down this bank. We've pretty much covered just one bank, to be honest with you. We haven't even started the big motor really, and just kind of worked our way down this bank, and we've been catching them. Now I threw up against this wall, and I've talked about shade a lot. Never discount shade even in the wintertime. They will use that shade for ambush areas and sit in there. So I just watched my line just taking off. I was busy looking back there in the cut after casting out there to see what else I could look at, and I caught him right off that ledge. You know, my boat is sitting in about 20 foot of water here, so they're not that deep. You know, one thing that's really important to understand about fishing, especially in the wintertime, is there's always shallow fish. You might have to cover a lot of water, but there is always shallow fish. You do not always have to fish deep. Sometimes the bite might be better in deeper water, and it's fun to use your live scope, things like that. But just going down the bank, finding some steeper walls, things like that, you can throw at the bank. They might be in that chunk rock when the water warms up, but there's always a few shallow fish to be caught if you want to go down the bank and catch them. Up, up, up. Got him. Right off that rock. Point. Right off that rock point. Just covering some water. You're not a bad fish. Come on. Come on. You want to come up? You know you do. Just kind of fight with him, let him drag a little bit here. They don't want to come up. This time of year they dig. Man, he's giving it to me. I didn't think he was that big, but he's a decent fish. Another good, decent fish right there. My goodness. My goodness, look at that. Come on. Come on. Come on. Ah, look at that. Another good little fish. I'll tell you what. Look at that. That is just a nice, healthy, well over probably 2.5 pounder right there. Just a beautiful fish, folks. And right off that point, in those rocks, you know, I think we've established a little bit of a pattern here with this, and just kind of going down the bank, hitting that chunk rock, and keeping the boat somewhat in a little bit deeper water. You know, it's ledgy, but these deep rocks, they're in it. They're in it for sure. Quality fish too. I mean, we're not catching those little 10-inch dinks. You know, we're catching some decent little quality fish. Folks, for my tip of the week, one thing that's really important, and it's not that I don't throw exposed hooks a lot when I'm drop shotting. There's times I do in certain lakes. But when I'm fishing this chunk rock where I'm finding the fish right now, I'm allowing this bait to hit bottom with the weight, and it's actually, I'm dead sticking it. So I'm letting the bait fall all the way down to the bottom before I kind of pull up again and start moving it down the, you know, pulling it over the rocks. If I had an exposed hook, what would happen is I get hung up on those rocks quite a bit, and I'm not getting hung up. So what's helping me is to make sure that I'm rigging it weedless. I'm actually got the head of the worm down here. Let me show you how I do this real quick. Okay, so what I do is I pretty much, here's the #1 rebarb hook. I'm putting the head of the worm in just to the bend of the hook. Then I'm pulling it out on the bottom. It's got a flat side on this robo worm. I'm pulling it out. I'm bringing it up to the head of the hook, all right, where you line tie it, and then I'm turning the hook around and poking it right back in the belly, making it as straight as I can, and I do what I call skinning the hook, skinning the bait, where I just barely pick up the bait a little bit and put the hook right in the top of the back again. And so that makes it weedless. That allows this bait to come through those rocks without getting hung up every time. And I'll tell you what, when you're dead sticking your bait and not keeping the bait up above those rocks, it really helps not getting hung up. That's a great tip when you're doing this kind of fishing. We caught all those fish on one worm, believe it or not, but you can kind of see how I'm rigging this bait now a little better. All that is that I'm going to retie it while I'm at it, but it's just a #1 rebarb hook. They call it the rebarb because right here, there's a little spot that holds the worm on. That little hook right there gets it done. And then, like I said, just a 1/4 ounce drop shot weight. You can use tungsten or lead. I'm using lead today, but there's a lot of times during tournaments I like to fish the tungsten, because the tungsten not only shows better up on the live scope as it's going down, because it's harder, it's a harder metal, but the thing is, man, you could feel every rock, pebble, or everything down there as you're dragging it across the bottom. Got him. I got that one. I guess it's a bass. I guess it's a bass down there. He's not big, but came over a few of the habitat they put in the lake here. Look at that. If you can find that habitat they put in the lake, sometimes you can drop your drop shot right in it, and they're sitting in there in about 20 foot of water. Oh, and there you have it. Oh, I threw it right in the middle of a habitat. And that's the other reason why I really, really like having this thing weedless, is because I can drop it in that habitat and it drops straight down in there. And if I had an exposed hook and some of that wood habitat they put in there, when you pull up, you'd constantly get hung up. Years ago, they put habitat in this lake. You can find it with your graph, especially your forward-facing sonar if you have one of those, but you can find the little habitats that they put in. Here's the deal though, when they first put them in, they were really big and tall and all this stuff, but I think over the years, because a lot of them are made out of wood, they've broken down and they're just kind of piles of rubble in some areas. So they haven't been as good as they used to be back in the day, but they're still there. And when you have an area that you're fishing that doesn't seem to have a lot of rock, or like you see over here, we got some reeds, but it's real shallow up there. You can usually go and find where the drop off is with your trolling motor and with your graph. Find where the drop off is around that 20-foot range, from that probably 15 to 21 foot range in that neighborhood. And a lot of times they put that habitat right before the drop off. So right before it drops off right there, that habitat's there, and those fish can stack up in there at times, and it can be real good. But you know, like I said, it's fun to find it, and when you find it, be able to throw something in there that you might be able to catch. Now, there's yellows, there's bluegill, obviously crappie, and then the bass. And so once in a while you might even catch a big cat doing it, but boy, I'll tell you, trying to get them out of that habitat can be brutal. But it's always worth a check if you can find it, and it just takes a little searching, and I'll tell you what, it can be a lot of fun. It can be rewarding as well. Well, I'll tell you, it's been somewhat of a fun day here at Apache Lake. I love this lake. That mid-February fishing after a cold front, about 2 days after a cold front, we managed to catch them on the drop shot today. And I'll tell you what, this lake does offer some quality fish, but it felt good just to get out here and get on some fish. I tried cranking there at the beginning and did a little reaction, some jerk baits. Just wasn't happening, and I just slowed down. And sometimes that's what you got to do, is just slow way down, especially when you have a high pressure. Low pressure comes in, you can get away with throwing some reaction, I'm sure, and catch them. But I'll tell you, we caught some quality fish, had a lot of fun here at Apache Lake. Grab your drop shot rig. I'll tell you what, you'll catch a lot of fish on it in Arizona. You know what makes this technique so special is it's 12 months out of the year. It really is. And you learn how to fish this technique, and you'll catch a lot of fish throughout the year. It might even become one of your favorite techniques. Thanks for joining us on the water. We'll see you next week. I'm Johnny Johnson.
Now, see, that's what I'm talking about, folks.